How's everyone doing today? Welcome to the stream. If you are watching this and it's not live, then you should probably subscribe, get notifications, things like that, so you know when we're going live. And today is Wednesday, February 5th. Yeah, at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. So for the rest of the week, I'll be streaming around this time. But yeah, videos will be saved for later viewing. Do we have an agenda today? Not really. I thought we'd kind of do a kind of casual Q&A session. Anything you guys want to talk about, I will try to answer your questions. And I don't know, maybe we'll watch some of the older videos, kind of see if things have changed, cringe together at the really old videos. I don't know. Maybe look at some memes, whatever you guys want to do. So I've got this on ultra low latency mode, so there should be less delay between the chat and what you're seeing or my responses. We'll try that out. And if there's any issues with audio or the video, let me know, and I'll try to fix that. So who's got the first question? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so let's go to, oh, there we go. What is your reference track source? I don't use reference tracks as much as I should, but I try to get references from the artist, and if possible, as like a WAV file that or MP3 that I can import into the project, and then I'll actually do the hang on. I'll actually do it in Reaper, either through the Media Explorer. I'll just play it because the Media Explorer's output goes to the monitoring effects chain, so I can see my important things like the LUFS level and things like that, dynamics, all that kind of stuff. But if but other than that, I might import a file in here. I'll just grab something as an example, and then I'll take off the master send, but I will put on a send to the main outs on here, and then I will mute it. When I want to listen to the reference, I just hit solo. If I want to listen to the project, then I just unsolo it. So muted and solo tracks will still play out the master, or the main outputs, and I use the uncheck the master send so that it doesn't go through the master bus effects chain. Hope that makes sense. General mindset, where to look for them. Just look for songs that suit the style, and you can have multiple different references for things like you can have references for great bass guitar sounds, great electric guitar sounds, and you use those when you're tracking and mixing. And if it's for mastering, then you're probably looking for things with a good balance, good overall tone, the sort of loudness you're going for, those sorts of things. If you master a track that you mixed by yourself, do you turn off the mix bus compression? Generally, no. I might export a version without the master bus or the mix bus compression, But I would say I would keep that on if I'm happy with it, because taking that off can completely change the sound of the mix. In the times that I've mixed something and sent it to someone else, I've sent both versions because the mastering engineer needs to know what you're going for with the mix bus compression, so that they can, match that or do better than that. But especially the way that I tend to mix through a mix bus compressor, it totally changes the balances. If you try to take that off and then do a mastering with like just limiting on it, it's not going to work. The mix just falls apart. Anything else? Mike asks, what do you consider an acceptable mix volume before mastering? I find my better sounding work tends to fall around -18 to -12. If I push to go harder, it usually sucks. Yeah, I mean, with I can't remember like if this track here is mastered. It seems like it's been through a limiter, but like if it's hitting the master bus and it's like clipping, yeah, this is definitely limited. You can usually turn something down in the first effects chain, in the master bus effects chain. So like something I frequently do is just take the re-EQ and just like set this to -6 or so. And instead of turning down the master track or the master fader, I mean it's kind of the same, but you can kind of doing this, just putting in a volume change there is the same as taking all the faders and turning them down by an equal amount. So this is the easiest way to kind of solve that, not having enough headroom in the master situation. If your mixes hit -12 before mastering, then I'd say -12 and -6 is kind of the right area. Mine tend to be around there. Like you sort of have to develop a strategy. So if you have your monitoring volume set, so I have my a pink noise at -20 dBFS. If I have that at 75 dB, I think it's dBc, just using my reference on my phone, then then something that hits at -6 is going to sound very loud. So if I get my bass guitar compressed and sounding loud in the room at that point, then then everything else is going to kind of fall into place there. And again, if as I'm going through the mix, things are getting too loud overall, I can trim things down on the master track. All right. But yeah, if you're going, if you're constantly hitting clipping in the master, then you might have to just pull everything down and rebalance and aim for something like -12 as your kind of your peak level for the master bus. David S asks about MIDI over USB from EZdrums or from eDrums to an instance of EZdrummer. Ended up having to manually edit the recorded MIDI. I don't have a good way to demonstrate that, but there are multiple ways you can approach that. So you can go into the MIDI drum brain and choose the sound, choose the MIDI notes that it's going to send out. You can also go into Easy Drummer and choose the mapping in there. So the drum map is in here. In here. So yours, you choose the Yamaha. So are you already doing that? I'm going to leave that question for now. Any experience with Ozone? If so, what's your opinion? I really like Ozone. I don't always like how they change it, kind of like every year or every 18 months or something. But I have Ozone, or I've been using Ozone like since I think version 3. Currently, I have version 8 and 9 installed. I like it a lot. I'm definitely not using everything from it. It's really debatable whether the full version of it is worth, like the advanced version, if that's worth getting. I originally got Ozone 8 Advanced because I wanted the individual processors to use in mixing, and then I realized that like the dynamic EQ and the dynamics, they don't have sidechain inputs, and that was really sad. And Ozone 9 dynamic EQ, yeah, still no dynamic EQ inputs, or what do you call it? Sidechain inputs. I think that's a really big missed opportunity to use them for mixing. Right? Anyone else agree? Saw your last video where you were able to fully collapse track folders to the in the arrange view. How do I set this up for myself? All the info is in that video. I mean, the inside of Reaper, there's this button to collapse. Why is it doing that? Right, there's this button to collapse here. If you want them like completely hidden, you have to edit the rtconfig file. And in the master track, if you want to hide the child tracks, that's in the master track, and clickable icon for folder tracks to show hide children. Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't remember the collapsing thing. You have to go into the color themes folder, extract your theme, like change the Reaper theme zip to Reaper theme.zip. It makes an unpacked folder, and then in there you've got your rtconfig file here, and I think it was in the header. Not the header, like the very top section, global section. Yeah, these ones. Line 27 in my theme. TCP heights 4, 25, 50, 64. So 4 is the minimum, the super collapsed. You could set this to 0. I'll set it to 0 just to show this. Turns out I do remember it, actually. So I'm going to refresh my theme. And you can't see it unless you take it out of the folder. I think a better way, if you want them completely gone, is just to hide them using the track manager or shortcuts. I think that would, that's going to be a lot safer. Hi, Omri. The Loop Cloud track we did 2 days ago. We did a couple different projects, but nothing that I really want to continue. I don't think. The mixing video yesterday went okay. I found it almost impossible to get into a flow state with the mixing because I was just constantly looking at the chat. And I mean, mixing is like, so it's so important to get into a workflow with mixing so that you're not thinking about anything else, and it's just impossible with the chat. So I don't know if we're going to continue with that. The other thing is that we also got, or I got a copyright claim on that video as well. So yeah, it's not ideal to work with that particular project. I think I missed some questions here. Smoothing out bouncy bass DI tracks. I'd say compression. Just, hit it with compression. A DI bass can take quite a lot of compression. You might have to, use 2 stages of compression. But yeah, people have been using compression on bass DI since like the 50s. So don't worry about that too much. Someone was asking about the buttons on the side of the mixer. Yeah, so you're looking for the video, a better way to select tracks by name. I think that's what it's called. Essentially, this is just a toolbar that's docked on the side of the mixer window, or the lower half of the main dock. In here, there are various buttons that are linked to scripts. And so let's see. So my custom show all tracks, that's what's inside there. There's just buttons to show and hide different sets of tracks. The other ones are like, let's say my drums one. Select tracks by name for drums, or show only specified tracks drums. Yeah, so these came from the Locusana's show only specified tracks. This script sets that up for me. This is a script that writes scripts when you hit on export preset. That's going to add one of these into the action list. So I could have a one called video, and it can select more than one track. It can do the children of matches and TCP and MCP. I can hit export, call it video. Okay, and there is my video show hide button, basically. I should get a link to that video. Oops. I searched in the wrong thing. Just a sec, guys. So this is what you're looking for with, the complete tutorial on this. Field recorder guide, track, feature, or similar. Trying to find a way to use less PT, but that feature is golden for dialogue editing. I don't really remember how that works. I think that was added after I had left Pro Tools. If I recall, it's basically like multi-channel tracks, but you're only listening to one at a time. Can you give me some more information about that, and I'll come back to the question. Can folder collapsing be above locking tracks height? I don't think I've ever tried. So like, we'll lock this track height and then collapse it. Yeah, it doesn't. Does seem to break it. No, wait, those are... I had some hidden tracks there. So I'll lock this. No, not track controls, track height. Yeah, so locking overrides the collapsed and super collapsed states. It's going to update my RT config again. So who was it? Philip was asking, was it Philip? Somebody was asking about my theme. I lost it. Yeah, Philip was asking about how the theme was coming along. Yeah, I thought that posting that video on the theme editing would be like the end of my obsession with editing it. But then I ended up doing a lot more to it, like while I was making that video, and then like immediately, like the day after, I ended up doing a bunch more things. So here's the video if you guys haven't seen that yet. I put pretty much all of my notes about this process of editing it in the blog post, so that should be a good reference. But I'm gonna have to come back and do a part 2 of this because there's a lot more that I've done. So since that video, well, in that video I did like the transport colors and reducing the amount of buttons in the transport bar. I did my toolbar buttons, so they have like a nice border and a glow sort of thing. Some of them I still haven't updated, so like these ones built into the default theme, they have like special buttons. So if I go to I think it's the 200 folder, search for icon. No, it's toolbar. So like a lot of these, they have the 3 states already saved, and you can't always... I'd have to manually edit in a border on all of those, and that's just a little too time consuming for me. So so that's kind of partially done, but I think that looks a lot better for these ones instead of just kind of being text on a plain gray border. I've tried to have more consistency between the different sections of the windows. I did the MIDI editor background and some of the other colors in here. So here's the default, which is pretty dark, kind of hard to edit. Don't really like it. So mine looks like this. So a different, I think I'm using a different mapping for the colors in there. Definitely the background colors are changed. A lot of this is actually done just in the theme tweaker rather than editing the RT config or changing any images, at least in the Midi editor. I don't know, various other things, like some of the colors in the Media Explorer, I think I've changed. Item properties has some changes. There was something I had to compromise on because of the SWS stuff. So the SWS window looks like this. I did one really cool thing that... so if I take a track and I record arm it, it automatically gets a red fader. So that's partly from putting in a new layout in the color themes folder. So for under 200, I've got a folder called red, and this just has a red fader cap in there. I had to edit RT config to make a new layout, which I'm still kind of confused about. But I kind of made it work. And then in the SWS autocolor setup, I've got it set up so that a record armed track gets the MCP layout 150 red. So, which is just like, that's what it's called in the theme file. Yeah, other than that, I don't... Oh, mixer colors. So instead of this being all solid gray, kind of the same as the background color, I've got this following the track colors by, mostly, I think I'm doing like a 40% opacity on it or something like that. So that was mostly just editing certain different colors in here. Various things with MCP in the name. So, all right, let's move on from that. That stuff is just exhausting for me to think about, honestly. But I do need to come back and make another video on it. There's at least one thing that I need to make a correction on. Okay. I missed a lot of questions. If you do any sound work, how do you do low frequency management in Reaper? If you're doing surround work, a third-party plugin for doing your that stuff is going to really help. The AnyMix, I think it's called. Hang on a sec. So this video here, I interviewed Vijay Ratanam, and I was talking about some of the differences between like the AnyMix panner and a resurround, things like that. Resurround doesn't really have all of the abilities that you need. I mean, it's gotten a little bit better in the last couple of years, but it's still, you still can't do things like panning between left, center, and right, like between channels 1, 3, and 2. And some of the other third-party plugins can do that, I think. But yeah. I don't do any surround myself, so it's not something that I research or am very knowledgeable about. How can I stop BPM from showing on the waveform when I import a media file? Okay, so you're coming from something that's exported from another DAW, or if it came from Reaper originally, then that is, then that's this option, embed tempo, in the render window. Just make sure that's turned off, and it won't embed the tempo in the file. But otherwise, if you just want to hide that, no, not that window, this window. If you want to hide those markers, it's called a media queue. And you want to run this action, view toggle show media queues and items. That will hide any markers from, like, things with embedded markers, regions, field recorder, metadata, things like that gets hidden from the items. Omri asks, is there a way to use two audio interfaces in Reaper on Windows? Pretty sure it's a big no-go, but maybe there's some workaround. I believe with ACO for all, you can do that. I think that's the only way to do an aggregate audio device on Windows. You can run into sync issues. But I think if you're just doing outputs, it might be okay. Like some people will try to do like two different audio interfaces, like an 8-channel one and a 2-channel one, and they'll try to record 10 channels at once, but then there's drift between. But if possible, try to do virtual like loopbacks and stuff like that. That might be a little bit more reliable, but not really sure what you're trying to do there. How do you clear the overload marker on the master bus? It doesn't go away at the top after an overload. Okay, so I think it's clip. So there's sticky clip indicators. You can turn that off, and it will not stay on. But there's also reset meter peak indicators on play and seek. So if this is on but this one's off, then just playing, stopping is not gonna restart it. Where'd that song go? Did I have a song imported in here, or am I just zoomed out really far? Okay, I'll turn this down. Right, so you can just click it to reset it, or it will reset when you play. Yeah, so that was the reset on play and seek. There's also the action clear all peak indicators, so you can do this during playback. I have that on option C. How do you make the track height like that? If I push the track height like yours, the track splits into two. The track's height messes up. Track splits into two. I don't really know what that means. So if it's really big, I mean, maybe in that case you have multiple takes. So I'm gonna so maybe it looks like that, and then when you make the track smaller, you're only seeing the one. If you have multiple takes and you don't want to see that, there's an action in the options menu called show all takes in lanes when room. And so if that is off, then you just have that item. Horizontal scrolling in the mixer window still doesn't work. Any workarounds? No, there isn't. For those that don't know about this, I will curse you with this knowledge. I'm just going to duplicate these a little bit. So to scroll with the mouse, in here, it's like one click of my mouse wheel goes from track 18 to track 27 instead of one at a time. So maybe you've never noticed that, but it is the worst thing ever once you find out about that. So now you're all cursed. When inside a MIDI clip, I see the draw button to draw new MIDI items. When I hover over an existing MIDI item, it changes to an arrow so I can drag and reposition the MIDI item. How can I set this as the default behavior? So when I'm in a MIDI file, I see the arrow so I can draw around MIDI information and then say control click to draw in new MIDI items. I would probably just go into the mouse modifiers. And in here, you've got tons of options for, was it MIDI? Which one is it? Oh, yeah, just MIDI editor will probably be that one. This has right drag options and MIDI notes, left click, left drag, double click. So all of those options should be in there. What is your most useful recently discovered script or action? I have to think about that. I don't know. Let me think. It's been a while since I've been really like surprised by anything in here. Trying to think of something that's new, like in the past month, that's like changed my workflow. And I don't think there is anything. There's some really cool stuff that I've never featured before, like the relauncher from Solger. So this is like the recent projects list. You've got your project templates, track templates, all this kind of stuff in one window, and you can manage them all here really easily. So I think that's a pretty cool one. So you can have you could save a list of projects. It's kind of similar to like the project list from SWS or the resources window from SWS, but new and all done in Lua instead of C++, whatever it is. There's another one from someone called None and Zero. Fast Effects Finder. I don't know if you've seen this one yet. But this does, I think, templates, or no, this does effects chains and effects by name. So EQ, and it highlights ones, and the ones at the top should be like most recently used, things like that. I've barely ever used this, but as you use it, it should kind of like sort by your most frequently used. So you just put this on a shortcut, start typing, and you can quickly add things to a song. I don't know where that went. I don't know what track I had selected. Let's put in the frequency shifter. Yeah. So that brings it in, puts it up, visible. Just to, as an alternative to going in here and sorting through lists, that kind of stuff. I don't know, just another option. If you are editing guitars, how do you know where the start of the transient is? Is it always the big spike? Thanks a lot. It's not always. Your edits tend to work best if they're between notes, right? So you can use that big spike as the reference point where you want that to line up to the grid, but I would probably not put the cut right before it. I would put it, in a silent bit before. It's kind of debatable. You might have to just test to see what you prefer, because there's maybe a millisecond of the pick touching the string before it actually makes a sound. Maybe you want to keep that. But what you could do is edit it and then try nudging it earlier or later and see if that makes any difference in the sound, if you prefer it more. And things can be a lot different when it's a mic on a guitar amp versus the DI track. Okay, so the question, I lost it. When I scroll down, it jumps down. Lets you choose between files in a multi-channel recording without losing the edits, timing, timecode. Makes it easy to swap between booms and labs, for example. Okay, I don't know if I have any multi-channel files on hand that I can import. Let's actually do it this way. All right, so we're going back to the question about the field recording function. So I'm just going to duplicate this source a few times. What am I doing? Duplicate. And I'm going to show all. And maybe I'll make some edits to some of them so they're clearly different. Maybe this one have maybe we'll have the panning. Yeah, so it's something like this. You can have it like this, where you're just showing like the full mix, but like inside of this track, you have all of these items, and when you're editing, all those edits stay the same, timing changes and things like that. Slip edits won't. Slip edits are per take. No, wait, these aren't. No, I need to start this demo again, because takes are not the same as channels. They could be. You could treat different channels as different takes, and then what I said there would make sense. But if it's different channels, it'd be a little different. I think I actually need a multi-channel file to import, and I don't think can't think of where I would have one at the moment. Yeah, this is something I need to think more about. I don't think I can do a demo of this right now. Okay. Don't have numbers in your MCP. Is that just a workflow enhancement, or maybe you focus on the sound than the numbers? Oh, the meter markings? Yeah, I don't really use those. I don't know. I hid them for some reason. But you could just do this mixer track and labels. I don't know. It just seemed less cluttered for me. And it adds this black chunk that I didn't like. So I prefer it without. That's all. Controller is following the selected track. Can I turn that off? And the solo button doesn't light up, but works. Following the selected track. I don't think that's something you can change. There's actually not a lot of control surface preferences. This is what I use for mine. And yeah, there's nothing really here that would change that. Yeah, I don't think you can change that. Discover the scripts by Archie. He makes very useful. Yeah, I've got so many scripts right now that I've like kind of stopped installing anything just because I don't know, it feels hopeless to try to keep up with it. But like, I don't know, it was so exciting when Repack came out, and there was just like suddenly like 1,000 more scripts were available and really easily, and you know you could keep them up to date really easily. But now it's like gotten out of hand. Now, let's see, my scripts folder is crazy. My scripts folder has how many files? 5,021 files. So it's hard for me to keep up with that stuff. The Cornelis asks, the spectrogram in peak display I think is really cool and all, but I'm not really sure how to utilize it. Any advice or thoughts on when a spectrogram can be a useful tool? I don't use it that much either. I don't really like the spectral editing in Reaper. Most of the time, I find I can I have access to RX7, so that's always going to do a better job for me. But if I want to keep it all in Reaper, I'm like, most of the time it's like I would rather automate an EQ on and off, or like, you know, taking out a notch or something. That tends to work cleaner for me. But the actual spectrogram view, I'm not using it. I don't like it that much. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just because it's so small that it doesn't really give you the kind of resolution you need. Like for me, the often like cutting out stuff down here would be where it's most useful. But if I import this into RX, actually RX will probably crash my computer if I try to do it during a stream. I'm going to leave it at that. But like, it's useful. It's nice to have. It's pretty awesome that we have this available for multi-tracks, like because RX can only do one file at a time. but I don't find myself using it very often. Do I have any field recordings? Let me see. I think I have some unedited field recordings. But most of them I do in either mono or stereo, like my own recordings. I think, yeah, these are left and right. And Crashbox was... I think these match. Yeah. So if they were separate WAV files instead of like a multi-channel or a polyphonic wave, you can what's the word? Implode items across tracks into takes. And then you can choose which one is playing. But like your edits stay together. And even if you're not showing all takes, like your edits will stay together. I think this is what you meant. So yeah, your edits stay together. They can be on one track, multiple tracks. If we go back to before imploding, the basic thing to do is just group them, like select them, press G. Got, and also make sure that this button here is on and selecting one item selects group. And then you can choose which ones are playing, with the track controls, or you can come out of group and then mute one if you don't want to hear the lavs, that sort of thing. I mean, lots of different ways to do it. The Pro Tools way, I think, is still a little bit different from that. But the basic idea, if you just implode these as takes in one item, if you want to hear everything, there's an option to play all takes. It's here. Item play all takes. And if that's on, then you'll hear like the lav mic and the shotgun mic at the same time within the same item. Yeah, and there's the toggle here, play all takes. Didn't actually change the visual of it. It's kind of weird, but there we go. How long have we been going for? Hour and 5 minutes? Okay. How to get Resamplematic 5000 Track Manager set up to one sample across all pads. I don't know how to do that, other than dragging it in 16 times. Not sure. I bet my coffee's ice cold right now. Yeah. Can you guys give me a minute? Microwave coffee is nasty, but I need it. Yeah, okay. Let's look at Resamplematic Manager. Okay, and bring up the Midi Explorer. Take a drum sample, drag that in. Not sure why dragging doesn't work for me, but oh yeah, I have to like select a track. I think it's that one. There we go. Yeah, I think the only way to do it is to just drag them into multiple tracks. Something like that. This has gone through a lot of updates since I last did a video on it. When playing, the cursor is following the play, but when I go to skip back a bar, it's going back to the edit cursor. Do you know where to adjust that? Skip back a bar, it's going back to the edit cursor. Like, do you mean with a scrub action or something like that? Really, the only way to avoid that is to first move the edit cursor to the play cursor. There's an action for that. What is it? Move edit cursor to play cursor. So it would be like a custom action that has that. Move edit cursor to play cursor, and then was it go back? Is it? No, it's not rewind, I don't think. Transport rewind a little bit. Maybe that works. Okay. Let's try that. So I think that works. Not sure if that's much different. It's pretty much doing the exact same thing, I think. We'll just run a bit longer. Yeah, I think the custom action's doing the exact same thing, actually. Could you explain the different track view you have next to your spectral view? You mean these toolbar buttons? Is that what you mean? Who is that? That was Adrian. Joseph asking about video choppiness and such. Okay, so I'll grab a video and import that. I'll just grab something from a recent project. It's my last published video. So there's a few things that really help. So if you go into preferences And video, I set my video decoder priority to just VLC. You know, no special junk in here, no exceptions, just VLC. If you click on show available decoder information, you want to see VLC 3 in here. Has to be the 64-bit version. On Windows, 32-bit is the default download, so just look for the advanced download options and you will get the 64-bit. Just install that as normal. Maybe run it once just to make sure that, you know, everything is completely installed. Reaper will find that. You just click here to verify. And if VLC is the only thing in here, then VLC is the only decoder that will work or be used. And then if I go to the, I'm in the video window here. So if I right click, there's these performance tweaks. So I have multiprocessing disabled, video decoder prefetch disabled, video cache on 1 second. All media and videos are not cached. And yeah, so there's various options in here. It seems like for my system, basically turning all those options off gets me the most reliable, cleanest result. And remember, I'm doing like video processing. If you're just playing back stuff, you might need different settings. But video works very smoothly in my system. I'm just using a pretty basic MacBook Pro 2015 model. The coffee at work is very rough. Got to make the switch to tea. I've been doing French press for like, I want to say like 10 years. And that's the best for me, I think. How do you make the ruler follow when you're in the Midi so things can line up visually? Okay, so there's a lot of different Midi editor options. Some of them are kind of confusing. But it's in the, I believe it's the contents. No, it's options. Where is it? I lost it. No, there's a function in here that syncs it. There's sync editor transport to project transport. I think that makes sense. Where is it? It's like always in the one that I don't expect. Oh yeah, here it is. Piano roll time base. It's in the view menu, not like an option, so it's a little confusing. I have it on project beats. That's going to sync this ruler to the project ruler. But if you have it on source beats, it's going to, this ruler is going to go from the start of the item. So I'll just set that. And see, just for example, look right here, it says 512. If I go to view, piano roll time base, change that to source beats, that's going to start at 1 now. If I go to view, piano roll time base, project time, that's going to be linked to my project. And there's one of them here, I think project synced. Project synced can be very strange. Oh, it's not glitching anymore. It used to do this very strange glitch thing. I think it's if you're zoomed in. Oh, I think they fixed it finally. Okay, so it used to be like when you zoom in, it's synced. But it used to make it so that you couldn't like move it left or right, or you couldn't dock it. You couldn't have this like over here and like edit anything because it would always like snap to some invisible part of the project. It was very, very strange. It seems okay now. But I think probably the safest one to have it on is Project Beats. zooming is independent. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about that. How do you play something back that was recorded before on the track while record is enabled on the track? Let's just call it a punch in. You want to punch in with a pre-roll. So when you're doing a punch in, you want to be using an overdub record mode. So there are two overdub record modes you can find by right-clicking on the record button in the transport. So we've got time selection auto punch. That's the one I typically use. So let's say I'm recording on this track and I want to replace this section here with a new recording. I make a time selection for my start and end point. Record enable the track. If you want to hear it before, you can set up your metronome to pre-roll. In here, go to pre-roll before recording, or just manually put the cursor a little bit earlier. So while it's playing back, your singer, whoever will hear the from this section, from here where the edit cursor is to the start of this time selection, they will hear what's recorded on the track. And when it hits this point, then it will switch to the input and start recording. So I'll just show you what that looks like with the Reaper blog. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I think I got my master track all the way down. And visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials. Okay, and now I'm recording an overdub on this track. And so it looks like that. I've got the original, I've got the punch in, and the actual recording goes back to where we hit start, which is right here. And I like to actually turn off crossfades when I'm working with an edit like this or a recording like this. So recording actually starts from where you hit record, but doesn't actually draw in the item except for from where you did the punch in from. Hope that all makes sense. It makes things a lot simpler if you just use the time selection when you're punching in something. But otherwise, let's say you're here and you want to do what they call like punch and roll, I think it's called. You can turn on pre-roll before playback. No, pre-roll before recording. And so hit record. The playhead moves back earlier, and then it starts recording from there. A longer pre-roll is going to give you more time to hear that. This has to be done in measures, which it's not ideal, but it was a little less flexible than it could be. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if it doesn't. Should probably go like another 5 minutes maybe. Oh, Adrian, you were asking about the buttons? These buttons, okay. So this is just a custom toolbar. We've got show peak display settings, show normal non-spectrogram peaks, spectral peaks, spectrogram and peaks, toggle spectrogram, add spectral edit, and rectify peaks. So these are all just basic actions in the action list. I do have custom icons, and I definitely did a video on doing custom icons. you search my channel for custom icon or toolbar icon, it just should come up easily. But all these buttons are just different options that are in here in this window. So, one button for each of these, essentially. How do I undo an edit that is way down the undo list without undoing all the edits I did after the one I want to undo? You can't really, but probably the best way... Everything's non-destructive in Reaper, so there's very rarely any sort of permanent edit. Really, I think importing that item again is going to be the easiest way to do it. I'm not sure what kind of edit you're talking about. You can go to... You can enable multiple redo paths. I think that's basically what you're asking for. Where, I don't know, it's a much more advanced undo history, but I think it's a really strange thing to do. And that with the warning that it's going to use up lots of RAM, it's never made me want to try it. But basically all of these undo points would have like, it kind of like splits off into alternate options. I think that solves the problem, but I think it can create other problems. Yeah, but like an edit to like track 10 that you did an hour ago, you can either you can try to do it through the undo thing, but it's probably not going to be as efficient as either importing that track again or going to your auto backups. So got this saved on my desktop. Backups. So here's this project that I have open. I can go back to 1225. And, all my stuff is there. So I would say that this is the best way to do it. The multiple redo paths is kind of weird. Not recommended. Going back to an autosave that's closest to your edit is probably the best way to do it. If you track the performance with multiple takes, then comping and editing, want to return to the originals with all takes, what's the method other than loading an automatic project backup? If there's multiple takes, and they're all kind of intact in the item, then I would just probably like drag them out like this to show all the takes again from the first one. I'd have to do this with multiple takes in here. And okay. So let's say I've got this cut up like this, and I want to, like, if this is the comp that I want to use, or if I want to go back, then I would just drag this out like that, and with the auto crossfades turned off, then you're back to a solid thing again. So I don't think that heal splits and items works like this. So I select all of these. Is it command heal? Yeah, heal splits and items doesn't do multi-takes. So yeah, I believe that's the only way to do it. Just to drag them all out. Okay, guys, that is an hour and a half ish that we've been going live for. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, ideas for live streams, we're going to do a few more of these this week. It's Wednesday. We'll do Thursday and Friday as well. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Hopefully, I've answered your questions sufficiently. And yeah, suggestions, leave them in the chat or the comment section. Send me an email, anything like that. Yeah, we're done. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys tomorrow around this time.